I bought 200 acres of raw land for $2,000. Yeah, you heard right, $2,000. Just 48 hours after the ink dried, I was out walking the prairie. That's when this woman with blonde hair and fancy sunglasses marched across the dirt in designer heels, making a beeline straight for me like she had a warrant to serve. She was waving a binder. Before I could even say hello, she jammed it in my face and said I owed their homeowners association $15,000. Back dues, violations, the works. I remember looking around at the wild grass and a couple of cows giving us a stare like, "Are y'all serious right now?" There were no houses, no fences, and no signs of civilization except for her family's mansion off to the east. I tried to keep my voice steady. This is my land. There is no HOA here, I told her. She just smirked like she had already won and started listing off legal threats. County liens, and what was apparently the world's most expensive bill for mowing air. What would you do in my boots if some HOA family tried to shake you down for $15,000 on a patch of empty Kansas prairie? Let me back up. This is how I ended up owning more land than some small towns for the price of a used motorcycle. 3 weeks prior, I was under a Peterbilt, up to my elbows in axle grease, when the phone rang. My grandfather had passed away and left me $50,000, just like that. Most folks would buy a new truck. Me, I wanted out of the diesel life. After 12 years of fixing engines, breathing fumes, and feeling my back shrink an inch every season, I had enough of always smelling like WD-40 and defeat. I dreamed about trading motor oil for dirt. I wanted to run an organic farm instead of running my health into the ground. So, I started hunting online for government land auctions, of all things. I spotted this listing, 200.3 acres agricultural parcel, Kansas. $2,000 in back taxes. That Saturday morning, I drove out with the windows down, gravel popping under my tires. Meadowlarks were singing over rolling black soil that stretched as far as you could see. Old fence posts marked out the borders like ghosts of farmers past. I could see corn rows stretching for miles in my head. Come auction day, it was just me and one other guy. He bailed after 10 minutes. Bam! 200 acres for $2,000. It felt too good to be true, and I definitely had my doubts. But I signed anyway. That Wednesday, I was back on my new land, testing the soil and soaking it all in. I noticed that mansion off in the distance, with its trimmed hedges and circular driveway. Someone inside in a polo shirt was typing away like the stock market was going to crash if he blinked. I was elbows deep in the good earth when I heard it. Click, click, click. Click, click. Those designer heels were coming right for me. The lady didn't waste a second and stuck out a manicured hand. I'm Eleanor Kensington, president of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. President. Of what, exactly? Her house. I asked how many homes were in her association, and she beamed. 12 beautiful properties. My husband, Preston, and I moved here from New York. He works in tech. We've really brought standards to the area, standards, on farmland that predates her by half a century. She whipped out that binder full of covenants and dues, claiming that my property had always been part of her HOA. I tried not to laugh. Ma'am, this has been farmland since the 60s. She flipped through the pages like a prosecutor. The previous owner agreed to monthly dues. You inherit those obligations. I asked how much. $15,000 in back dues and $750 a month going forward, she said. I actually laughed out loud. HOA fees on empty farmland. That's when she flashed a little smirk, like she had run this play before and won. These covenants are legally binding, she said. Her perfume was so strong it made the air taste like synthetic lavender, and my nerves went sharp. We'll file liens if necessary, she continued. Contact county commissioners. Make things very difficult for you. She even handed me what looked like emails from the previous owner. But the formatting was all wrong, like she had printed out her own scam. I asked for real legal documents, and suddenly she got defensive. "They're filed with the county." "Look it up yourself," she snapped, before strutting off back to her mansion. But what really got me were the threats of liens and legal action in the first 5 minutes of knowing me. That wasn't confused neighbor behavior. That was predator behavior. I might just be a diesel mechanic from Wyoming, but I wasn't born yesterday. Where I come from, handshake deals still mean something, and folks don't try to steal land with fake paperwork. That night, lying in bed with her threats running through my head, it hit me. If she was doing this to me, how many others had she and Preston scammed? It was time for some homework. I headed to the county courthouse because if there were real HOA documents, that's where they'd be. The next morning, I walked up the old stone steps of the courthouse, the air heavy with rain and trouble. The county clerk, Martha, had bifocals on a chain and fingers stained with decades of ink. She took one look at me and said, "You're here about the Kensington situation." Turns out, I wasn't the first person that month asking about property records after tangling with Eleanor. Martha laid out the paperwork. My deed and agricultural exemption were clear as day, dating back to '67. The original survey had no mention of Oak Ridge Estates anywhere, just empty fields. Then came the real kicker. Eleanor's HOA filing was just 2 years old, covering only her own cluster of houses. My land predated their development by 40 years. "Trying to retroactively add the moon to your backyard," Martha said with a shake of her head. Then she told me Eleanor had been in there 6 times that month, trying to get my deed amended. She brought forged paperwork with my name typed at the bottom and a signature that looked like a 3rd grader wrote it left-handed. I had never signed anything. Martha knew it was fishy and didn't file the change. Now, I had her dead to rights on attempted fraud. I headed home, hammering up no trespassing signs and running my own soil tests, making it clear this was farmland, no matter what President Eleanor thought. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Hudson, this is Brenda from Oak Ridge Property Management. You owe $17,000 in assessments." Wait, $17,000. That morning, it was $15,000. I asked her for a company address. She stuttered and gave me a UPS store box. "Ma'am, that's not a business address," I told her. She immediately hung up. That night, Preston cruised past my property in a black Tesla, windows down, snapping pictures like he was casing the place. I waved. He didn't. I called the sheriff and Deputy Carter showed up the next morning. I showed him the threats, the fake paperwork, and the harassment. Turns out, I wasn't their first target. 3 other families had paid them thousands before figuring out the scam. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about my land anymore. This was about stopping a pattern of rural fraud. The Kensingtons picked the wrong diesel mechanic. Days went by, bringing more threatening letters and official notices. They sent fees for landscaping and road maintenance for roads that hadn't seen a dime of work since the '70s. Plus, there were fresh ink bills from a mailbox in Las Vegas, Nevada. Another Kensington family member was running a fake property services company. But then it got worse. They started bringing in neighbors, staging photos, making up violations, and spreading rumors online that I was a dangerous, aggressive landowner. They were turning the whole area against me. So I decided to fight back. I called Jessica, a lawyer specializing in rural property scams. She dug deep and found out the Kensingtons had run this play in 3 states. They left behind fraud investigations in New York and scammed dozens of families out of almost $200,000. Then Martha, the courthouse clerk, found the golden ticket, the original deed from 1967 with permanent agricultural protection. Any attempt to include my land in a residential HOA was fraud under Kansas law. Even better, they had tried to forge the previous owner's signature after he had already died. It was clear, premeditated wire fraud. With Jessica and the sheriff, we set up a sting operation. We had professional surveillance and everything. We baited the Kensingtons with news of a $50,000 agricultural grant for my model farm. Sure enough, Eleanor showed up, binder and all, with backup. She tried to bribe the inspector, who was actually an undercover agent. She presented more forged documents and even threatened a government official when things didn't go her way. Every single word was caught on tape. The whole scheme came crashing down. The FBI, sheriff's deputies, news crews, everyone showed up. Watching Eleanor and Preston get hauled away in cuffs and hearing my neighbors break out in applause felt like a harvest festival and state fair rolled into one. My agricultural deed is now permanently protected. No HOA or suburban developer is touching this land. 6 months later, the corn is knee-high. The scammers are in prison, and the restitution money bought real improvements for our little community. We got a seed drill, road repairs, and even a scholarship fund for local agricultural students. Jessica's case went national. New laws were passed to protect rural landowners, and I've heard from farmers in 7 states using our story to fight their own battles. If you're listening out there, wondering what you'd do if someone tried to steal your land, with paperwork and threats, stand your ground. Don't let anyone tell you rural folks are easy marks. Justice might take a while, but when it lands, it tastes sweeter than a cold beer at sunset on your own piece of earth. So let me ask you this. Where do you draw the line between standing up for what's yours and keeping the peace with your neighbors? Would you risk everything to stop a scam, or just pay to make the problem go away? I want to hear your stories. Good, bad, or ugly. Drop a comment below. Tell me about your own run-ins with fake authority. And let's make sure folks like the Kensingtons never pull this stunt again.